Okay guys, welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to be talking about one of the most controversial issues in the whole of the Porsche community. Now, the controversial issue I want to talk about is the problematic bore score and the IMS failure. Now, as many of you guys know, there's a lot of different speculation online as to why this happens, if it can be prevented, if so, how to prevent it, or if there's a cheap way to rebuild it, because you know a lot of people don't want to go the most expensive route and a lot of them want to be able to rebuild these engines on their own. The engines I'm actually talking about is the M96 and the M97. You'll find the M96, the later versions, in the Porsche Carrera, the 996 from 2001 up to 2004 until the switch over to M97, which was the Porsche 997 M97 engine in the 997s, which also followed through with the same amount of issues. Now, this was a big problem, and you know, there is a lot of people out there that seem to believe they're the only people who can rebuild and fix this problem for sure. But that is simply not the case, and even them who are supposing they can actually rebuild it and have the problem never ever come back is absolutely talking a lot of crap, because that's simply not the case. Anyone who knows these engines know this isn't a case of if it's going to happen, it's a case of when it happens, and it's going to happen to every Porsche 997, 996 owner out there. This is a very plagued issue. Now, as many of you guys know, I bought my Porsche 997 very cheap from my good friend because it was an ex-track car. I was fully aware of the issues it had. Obviously, he come to me. It was meant to be just minor little things I was meant to do to it, and then he was meant to take it back, but he didn't have the money. Then I actually managed to diagnose this car as having bore score. So obviously he didn't want no part of it any longer, which is why he actually sold it to me, because he knew the amount of money this car needed to invest, and as he said, it just wasn't worth it. Now, obviously, he's got a later 997.2, so for him, it's not a big loss for him. This was purely just a track car. It needed so much work. It just didn't make sense for the amount he spent on it, the amount he'd have to probably pay me. Even though we're good friends, I still can't do it for absolutely free, you know, because of the amount of work that this car needs. So he then ended up selling it to me. Now, obviously, I've got good friends that can actually help me with this, and obviously, not only that, get new liners in there who have a very good reputation in the race industry. You know, there is a lot of companies out there that seem to believe they are the only people that can rectify this issue, which is, as I said, is a load of crap. Maybe when the engines first were released back in, you know, 2001, maybe so, because they had spent 5 years looking for a cure and how to rectify it. But you know, technology moved on. There's a lot of other people who are as experienced as these people. And you know, there's a lot of other people who can rebuild these, that actually rebuild for loads of specialists around, especially in the UK, and have had no issues. And if you go on YouTube, you'll find a lot of people who have had their engines rebuilt by normal garages who use other machine shops that they know and trust to have new liners put in and have no issues. And obviously, you know, these shops are going to only use trusted sources, because obviously all their work is guaranteed, and the last thing any garage wants to be doing is dropping an engine on a car 20 times over to rectify the same issue over and over again, because garages just don't have that time or space to be doing that. Now, how the bore scoring issue actually happens on these is, if many of you guys don't know, Porsche went and installed coated liners inside the case arbs themselves. Now, in theory, it's not actually a bad thing, because many other manufacturers do it all the time. The problem is with these is the way these engines sit. It's all to do with heat expansion, and obviously coolant isn't flowing around the block properly to actually cool and help aid the liners, the walls, everything inside the engine internally. So that is what's causing the bore score problem in itself. So another problem people ain't aware of on these engines is the sensors that can go bad on these cars. Now, the sensors can cause you to end up with bore score even if you didn't have the problem. Now, as many people know, sensors are notorious for going out. It doesn't matter what car it is. It doesn't matter. It could be a Ferrari, a Lamborghini, a Porsche. It doesn't matter how expensive the car is. It's a sensor. It's a computer-controlled chip, which at the end of the day is going to go out, whether it be 50K, 100K. It's not something you can control. It's out of your control. Now, if an air mass sensor fails and the owner doesn't pick up on it in time, or doesn't notice any kind of fluctuation in the car, What that's going to cause is over-fueling from one of these, from where obviously the air mass ain't reading right, which means it's not delivering the right amount of air mixture into the combustion chamber. Now, in theory, what that's actually going to do is going to inject more fuel, which obviously when you think of it injecting more fuel into the combustion chamber, that's going to spray off the coating on the liners itself. And this goes for oxygen sensors as well, because they are used to help the fuel and air mixture. So if they get bad or they get clogged up from, oil being burnt off, then that's going to end up with the same issue as well. If they go bad, you're going to end up with it over fueling, which is in turn is going to be spraying so much fuel it's going to wear off the coating inside. Now, realistically, there is nothing you can do about bore scoring. A lot of people have, believe that it can do with the cooling. So by remapping it to make the fans come on a lot earlier at, for say 85 Fahrenheit, that's going to help it, and that's going to stop the liners being completely burnt out and scratched up, and stop having a rebuild every 100k. Many people believe using a higher octane fuel is going to help the liners as well. Many people believe running a much better oil or changing your oil regularly. I don't think any of that will help prolong the life of the engine. Obviously, let's put it bluntly, Porsche should never have said every 15,000 miles for oil changes on these cars, same as BMW do. It was to make these cars sell a lot better with a long service life, which I think was absolutely ridiculous. These cars should be serviced every 3,000 to 5,000 miles, oil change at least at the bare minimum. And if you do track these cars, I do believe you should be changing oil even more regularly, like every 1,500 miles than every 3,000 to 5,000 miles, purely because obviously you're putting extra strain on the components, obviously to make sure it's fully protected. Now, the oil weight depends on many of you yourself. As many of you guys know, you've got Porsche who recommends 0W30. So most people recommend 5W40, 5W30, and so on and so on and so on. And it can go up to 10W50 that many people recommend. Now, I don't believe in whatever the case of oil is going to protect the liners. Many people know, if you go back to the old air-cooled engines, even them engines needed to be rebuilt. The only difference is why people didn't moan is because you could slot different parts of the car and take it off individually. People only moan about this car because obviously you have to strip the whole entire engine down to be able to rebuild it, where you can't just remove a simple part. Now, does this make them a bad car? No, it does not. And it does not make them a bad engine at all. When you go over and you look at the BMW S85 engine, which is the M5 V10, and you look at the S65, they have to have their rod bearings replaced. And then when you compare that to the F10 M5 with the S63 engine, you're seeing them, as soon as they're tuned, spin a rod. And then the whole engine needs rebuilding anyway. So realistically, it's to be expected. You have to remember, these 911s are track cars. They're race cars. And it's only true that they are going to need a rebuild or an overhaul every 100k. That's just common sense. And if you track it, it's going to be much, much less than that. Because obviously you're taking it to the full red line, putting extra wear and tear on the engine. So it's only to be expected. Now, the only people that do moan about a rebuild on these or an absolute shock are people who can't do it themselves or don't have the money for the maintenance. For instance, like my friend, for instance, he could afford to buy the car. He could afford to go around and hammer it around. But when it comes to its end of life, bearing in mind my friend's got money, he can just get rid of it because of the simple fact he has money to go and buy another one. And that's what a lot of people do. They don't want to rebuild them. And then that's why they get angry and don't like them and then start moaning that it needs a rebuild. And it doesn't make the engines crap. I think in theory, it's actually really, really good, because you know why? You get to tear the whole engine down. You'll get to see every internal in there, and you'll be able to rebuild the whole engine and make it the way you want it. And if that's with upgraded parts, forged parts, upgrading internals, upgraded IMS, whatever you need, you can do while in there. And it just makes much better sense. Now, when you look at the S85, they only need the rod bearings and they need the Vanos pump, obviously, unless they actually spin a rod, which then means you need a whole new engine. But then people still only focus on them particular things. With this, you focusing on the whole internals altogether. So that would be new pistons, new rod bearings, having your crankshaft polished up or reground, whatever you want to do, having new valve seats, relapsing the valves, doing whatever you need to do, upgrading your timing chains, tensioners, redoing the whole lot. So I don't get why people moan about it. In theory, it's an absolute good thing, and it's to be expected. I'm not sitting there saying, oh my God, Porsche is a heap of crap because you have to rebuild the engine. That's just not true at all. It really isn't. I actually prefer to be here stripping this car down, because you know what? When I strip this down, because there was so much that had never been changed, I'm getting to change that now, make it all like new. So when I actually put this car back on the road, there is going to be no problem with this car. It's going to drive absolutely ace. Now, the question many of you are going to ask me is, can it be prevented? And the simple answer is, no, it can't be. It cannot be prevented. So if you are considering buying a 997 and wondering, oh, this person's had it bore scoped and everything's fine. Yes, they've had it bore scoped. The problem is, it's a low mileage car. It doesn't usually happen. Give it around 80 to 90K to 100K, you're gonna end up with bore score. And this is the problem. People try and pass them off, just like the E60 M5, just like the E93 M3, because of the rod bearing issue. That's why they end up with so many errors, because people are passing them around, trying to get rid of it before it grenades itself, because people don't want to spend the money. People want to have their fun and then pass them on. And at some point, it has to come to someone who's gonna be willing to repair it and just think, you know what, let's get it done, because this has had a hard life, and at some point it's gonna grenade. And obviously this is the same one with my friend's one that I purchased. It has to be done. It's not a case of if I wanted to do it, it's when, and now the time is now to do this engine, and now it's time to put new liners in it. Now, as I did say to you, I'm probably gonna get a lot of backlash on this video, especially from companies. Many of you guys in the Porsche community already know who I'm referring to, who are gonna try and comment on there, but their comment will be blocked anyway, so there's no point in them commenting, because they see this is a big channel. They're gonna think they can try and comment and protect themselves, as they do everywhere else on the forums. And I'm not gonna sit here and give no crap. I'm not gonna sit here and lick their ass. I'm not gonna sit here and kiss their ass like many people do. I'm gonna be very, very honest with you. There is cheaper alternatives to having this engine rebuilt. Now, I'm gonna be honest with you. My friend is rebuilding this whole engine. Now, bear in mind, he builds race engines, and he has done 180 997 engine, new liners, constantly for shops, for friends, and he's had no issues. And his one's on 60K. You've got others in the country on 80, 90, 40, 30K, new ones, no issues whatsoever. Now, many of you are already gonna know the companies I'm referring to. Their price is simply not worth it. It really is not. Back when these engines were first made and they first come out, yes, they found a repair for it, managed to sort it, and they were the only ones. But as time has gone on, there is other people that can do exactly the same thing with very, very good results. And you can see that by the amount of people, even on YouTube, go and look up bore score. Many people have their cars repaired by independents and have no issues again. And you've got to remember, these garages are warranting their work. So they're not gonna go and use a company that's gonna say, oh my God, you know, it might go wrong. No, because let me just tell you something now, which a lot of people won't tell you. I know a lot of different machine shops. And you know, I'm not, many of you guys know I'm your average YouTuber. Remember, I was in the trade for a long time. I know a lot of different contacts. A lot of people know who I am. I've got a lot of friends, and I can tell you now, the company who seems to believe they are the only ones to do it, I can get people to say that they are redoing their own liners because they fitted them incorrectly, and where engines are having to be pulled back out because even they messed up when doing it as well. And obviously, they're gonna, like I said, they're gonna try and comment on this video because many people are gonna share it. And when they do, I will actually prove what I've been saying all along. At the end of the day, what they do is good, yes, but it's not needed. That is only if you're gonna be tracking the car, which, let's face it, 75% of people are not going to be tracking their 911s. Most people want them for simple road use, you know, redline them now and again, not redline them constantly around the track. So therefore, it doesn't make sense to spend 5 to 6 grand to have the engine rebuilt by them for something that, you know, many people ain't even gonna do. Now, I'm not planning to track this car. It's already been a track car. This is now retiring from a track car. Now, bearing in mind, it's only got 84,000 miles on this. But once it's rebuilt, it's gonna be stored in here. Obviously, the new owner is gonna be coming to buy it once I do the braking service, which is around 500 miles. Once the braking service is done, then he is gonna be buying the car, and he's gonna have a very, very good 997. And obviously, work is warranted by me. You've got to bear in mind, wherever it's gonna be new, if I ever have to take the engine back out, every bolt is gonna be new, everything will come off very, very easily. And I can have the case self split again. But I know, I'm very, very confident in the people I know that do this day in, day out, that it's not gonna happen anyway. And I'm very, very sure of that. Now, there is a lot of people out there who think, oh no, let's just go to them because of the name. And that's what you're paying for, is the name. Now, when I actually show you that I could have these liners redone for that amount of money, Many of you guys, and I know there's many of you in the US, most of you in the US that are gonna watch this channel, that's what the majority of this channel is, mostly you guys in the US. Now, the company I use, which is my good friends that actually own it as well, they allow products to be sent in overseas as well. So if you guys do want your liners fitted, obviously it can be done. Obviously, it ain't gonna be as cheap as I'm getting it for, but it's not gonna be as expensive as many of you guys get charged in the US because, you know, as I told many of you guys over there, they do like to try and take the absolute piss at people over there. So if you are in need of liners, once I have this done and I show you how it actually comes out, I can actually get you in contact with them and you can be shipping yours over to them as well and have it repaired very, very cheaply. And obviously if you're willing to strip your whole engine down and willing to rebuild it yourself, well, you can have this engine rebuilt for less than 5 grand. So therefore you have a very, very good car and a very, very superb engine as well. Now, as I said, I'm not here to bash anybody, to beat up companies. This is not what I'm about. At the end of the day, I have my own people. I trust my own people. You know, I don't see the point of paying out for something that's just not needed at all. As I said, these cars do need rebuilding every 100K and everyone needs to be aware of that. And also many people do fail to realize, they think when you install new liners, they're like, are you sure it's gonna fix the problem? Is that gonna be it? Once it's rebuilt, it's done. No, it's not it. Once it reaches 100K again, it's probably gonna need rebuilding again. Think about it, guys. When the car is on like 80K, 100K, this car will be on 180K probably by the next time it needs rebuilding. Is it gonna be worth rebuilding at 180K? Am I gonna keep it 100,000 miles? 100,000 miles is a lot of mileage. I didn't even do that in the M5 when I had it. I only did 4,000 miles after doing the rod bearing. So you have to think of that. That's what they mean by it will last the lifetime of the engine and you won't have to do it again. You know, 84,000 miles, that's accumulated over 18 years. So 18 years, 84,000 miles is, you know, a long, long time. So you think this will take it probably about another 20 years before it does that. So really, you do get a good life expectancy from these engines once they're rebuilt. So I really don't see why people moan about them. But guys, that is my take on it. And like I said, there is cheap alternatives out there. And the reason I did this video is really to explain. Another reason bore score can happen, and I think this is one of the reasons this one did have it, is because this one has a tune on it. This has a tuned gearbox, this has a tuned ECU. Obviously, when you tune a car, obviously you're injecting more fuel into the combustion chamber, which again, injecting more fuel into the combustion chamber is obviously wearing off the coating on the liners as well, which I'm gonna be taking the tunes off this because it's just not needed at all. So the tunes are gonna be coming off this on the gearbox and the engine itself. Obviously, another reason this happens, and I do want to advise a lot of guys, people with 997s will go, and as soon as they buy one with low mileage, no problems with bore score, will straight away bolt on an IPD plenum and a GT3 throttle body. Do not do that. That will cause your bore scoring issues within a month of hammering that around and getting more power. Now, as many of you guys, or if many of you guys don't actually know, Porsche's ECUs are very, very clever and they adapt. So you can bolt on the IPD plenum, bolt on the throttle body, and it will adapt the fuel mixture for the new amount of air coming into the engine. Now, what do you think that's doing again, guys? As it's letting in more air into the combustion chamber, it's having to inject more fuel. The ECU picks up on that, again, wearing the coating away from the liners itself, which in turn end up, you know, causing the bore score problem, which ends up causing the piston to rock and slap and scrape the liner walls. So what I'm gonna do right now is I'm gonna upload 2 clips from when I bore scoped this engine to show you guys how scored up number 5 and number 6 are. And it's only 5 and number 6. Now, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna upload 2 clips showing you guys cylinder 5 and cylinder 6 on this particular engine, which I actually videoed, showing you all the scoring on the liners. As you can see there, how badly scored they really, really are. This has been like this for, I would say, probably around the last 20,000 miles. This has been scored like this, and you know, that's where the piston is absolutely rocking. Obviously it's just scraping the liners as it goes up and down, and it's obviously not good. Now obviously I haven't got this engine disassembled yet, so I ain't gonna know if I'm gonna need new pistons. Let's pray I don't, but if I do, then I was gonna put the male ones in, not an issue. But as you can see here, I am gonna be replacing all 6 liners. Now I know many people, especially that's gonna watch this, especially in the US, gonna say, oh, if it was me, I'd just replace the 2 liners. You should never ever do that. because you're gonna pay to rebuild this whole engine. And if you ever have to take it apart again to get to another ones, which they will score, you'll be back spending all that money again. If you're gonna rebuild these, you have to rebuild all 6 liners. Now, I'm gonna be honest with you, the liners ain't expensive. You can get the liners for around all 6, nice, you know, good ones from, I think they're iron ones that you can buy, I think for 800 quid, all in, all 6, which isn't expensive. And I've got my friends only charge me £500 to do the work. So when you work that out, it's really not expensive, about 1,300 quid to do it. And realistically, it's well worth to do all 6 while you're there. I know people can say, what if you don't have the money? If you don't have the money, realistically, you shouldn't be owning a Porsche. It's very simple. You shouldn't even be attempting to do this yourself. You shouldn't be owning one of these, because these are gonna take up a lot of money. Only true, I'm doing it myself, but I'm looking at being about £5,000 in rebuilding this engine from what I worked out. But you gotta remember, I'm still within a good profit margin because I bought this car cheap for my friend. You can't go out and spend 20 grand, all these insane people selling their 997 for 25 grand with no engine rebuild, no coolant pipes done, no control arms, and they're just trying to flog it for 25 grand. That's ludicrous, and these people are smoking drugs. You cannot go out and spend that type of money when they all need this work, because it's not gonna happen, even though they've had it checked. It's going to happen. Either that's gonna happen, or the IMS fail, even if they tell you they've got the later revised one. When the gearbox is off and the engine's split, change the IMS at the same time. Why would you put back your old IMS? Doesn't make sense. This is gonna have a complete whole new IMS as well. And like I say, guys, I don't wanna keep this video any longer than needed. And as you guys see, you see what I mean about the bore score issue. Many of you know already how plagued out and how controversial this issue is across the whole, you know, board everywhere across the internet. There's many people who have done videos on this, many people who have tried to find a philosophy for why it happens, how to avoid it, but it just doesn't seem to do it at all. You know, at the end of the day, I knew what I was getting myself into, and realistically, I was only thinking a few months before my friend actually sold this to me, I did want a bore scored 997, or even a 987 I would have been happy with. It doesn't really matter for me. I wanted a bore scored engine because I believe I could add a lot of value to this, especially because there's a lot of people, especially on YouTube, who don't do the repairs themselves or are taking it to shops. And I'm trying to prove how cheap it is to actually have it redone yourself. If you don't let a garage do it, or you don't make a garage do all the work for you, you can really save a lot of money. So 5 grand all in, I can rebuild this engine. That is going to be with new pistons I've got accounted for as well. If I do need them, that's a new IMS as well. That's chains, that's engine rebuild, the whole gaskets, that's everything to get this engine rebuilt. But a lot of people won't believe that, and this is why I thought I'll do a video when I actually rebuild it to actually show a lot of you guys as well. So as I said, guys, thank you very much for watching. And as I said, there's going to be people, a lot of garages, especially one garage, just going to comment here, trying to save their ass because they know they're in the wrong for what they're doing, and absolutely, milking people for something that is not needed in this day and age. And they're going to try and comment, but their comment will be deleted and blocked anyway, so it don't really bother me. So thank you very much for watching, guys. It's BMW Dr. Dean here, and goodbye.